Hi everyone, welcome to our discussion in art appreciation. In this video, I will be discussing the elements and the principles of art. So for the elements, let's start with the visual elements. Visual meaning elements that we can see with our eyes. So the elements of visual arts are the following. Number one, lines. Two, colors. Three, texture. Four, perspective. Five, space. Six, form. And seven, volume. So the elements of art, of course, can be seen in different artworks. So these are the different elements: shape, texture, form, value, color, space, line. So the elements of art are the visual components which are required to create a work of art. So these elements, of course, can be found or can be seen in different artworks. Knowing the basics of the elements of visual art can help any artist to create a well-balanced and beautiful designs. To develop a more thorough understanding of artistic composition, one must learn how to examine and utilize the various art elements. So let's start with the very first one, the very first element, that is what we call as the line. So here we can see different types of line. So we have curved, we have straight, we have diagonal, zigzag, dashed or dotted, perpendicular lines, horizontal, we have outline, we have wavy, and parallel lines. It's actually different in mathematics and in art because in math, if you will say line, there's no other type of line but only a straight line. But in art, there are different types of lines. So by definition, line is a mark on a surface that describes a shape or outline. It can create texture and can be thick and thin. So types of line can include actual, implied, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and contour line. So line is an important element at the disposal of every artist. Every artist uses this element in their artwork. Always has direction. It is always moving. And as used in any work of art, it may either be straight or curved depending on the artist based on his or her artwork. So the types or the line that he or she will be using will vary. Line are the first element of art and are continuous marks that are made on any surface with a moving point. So for artworks that I have seen, lines are the very basic ones. So an artist usually starts with lines before he or she proceeds with using other elements. Lines can be used in various ways to create different compositions. A line can be used to express various things or feelings. It can be used to show various moods or anything abstract. So the type of line that will be used by the artist also has meaning behind it. Line serves as an essential building block of art, but it can also serve as the content itself of a work of art, or may or be manipulated to evoke an emotional or intellectual response from a viewer. So if we see an artwork, it will also be subjective. It will depend on us as to how we will be interpreting that certain artwork. So what do these lines suggest? Vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal lines, and curved lines. So here we have examples of vertical lines. When you were in elementary, I'm not sure if kinder or grade one, the very first thing or activity that our teachers before asked us was to draw lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines, and diagonal lines. So vertical lines are poised for action. They are poised, balanced, forceful, and dynamic. They express an impression of dignity. So the next time you see vertical lines, so you will know what those lines would mean. So here we have buildings, tall and huge buildings. And as we can see, there are a lot of vertical lines in those buildings. So that would imply that these buildings are has certain dignity to it. So only vertical lines can be used to express an orderly feeling. Also, the structure on how this building was created. So using vertical lines, it will also show a sense of uniformity to it. So next we have the monument of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. So we can see a vertical line here on top. Here, I think this is a structure or a building in Europe. We can see here vertical lines, same as here. Also this structure, so that is vertical. I'm sorry. Also here, this sculpture here, so that is vertical in nature. Next, we have horizontal lines. So we have here examples of horizontal lines. And what does these lines mean? Horizontal lines are lines of repose and serenity. They express ideas of calmness and quiescence. So in contrast to vertical lines, so vertical lines are lines that depict integrity. Horizontal lines is a symbol for serenity and calmness. So this artwork right here, wherein you can see horizontal lines. So yeah, that would be a symbol of serenity. So only horizontal lines can give a feeling of peacefulness and stillness. So this one right here, you can see horizontal lines. So these are artworks that are representations of Boracay and Siargao. Next, we have diagonal lines. So diagonal lines are used to create feelings of movement or actions. So as we can see here by these waves, you can see there diagonal lines. So diagonal lines I'm sorry. So diagonal lines gives us the feeling of movement or action. So these pictures are still taken from Siargao. Curved lines, on the other hand, sometimes referred as S-curves, suggest gracefulness or sexiness, as can be seen in a woman's body. So we have here train tracks, and we have here a curve formed under a bridge. So if you want to photograph S-curves, the human body makes for a wonderful subject, just like what I've said earlier. From the arc of a foot to the curve of a neck, you can find many ways to capture curved leading lines by photographing the human form. So here, this is a photograph of a pregnant woman. So here in her tummy, in her stomach, you can see a curved line. Also in her back, also in her bottom. So we can see curved lines right there. So the human body is a perfect example of curved figure or curved lines and shapes. So we have here the actress Angelina Jolie, I think, and another model right here. So we can see curved figures, curved bodies. It is up to the artist how he conveys his message in the best way possible through the use of lines. There are various ways to integrate lines into a photograph to help strengthen the overall composition and draw attention to a specific focal point. So when using vertical lines within a photo, photo, it is a good idea to follow the rule of thirds. Failure to do so can result in a photo lacking as though it's been cut in half. It is also important to try to keep the vertical lines as straight as possible. Vertical lines or vertical leading lines can help to illustrate growth, authority, strength, or dominance. Some examples of vertical leading lines in photography include photographs of trees or tall buildings. So just like this one right here in this photograph. When composing your photo to include horizontal leading lines, make sure they're as straight as possible. So same with vertical lines. And consider again following the rule of thirds. This photo, for example, places the land and horizon along the bottom third of the image, while the sky fills the top 2/3 of the shot. Further, the photo was composed so the bride and groom are along the left third of the image. So, following the rule of thirds, the land and horizon. So, the land right here and the horizon right here composes 1/3 of the photograph, and the remaining, this one right here, is the remaining 2/3, which is the sky. And also vertically, so 1/3 of the picture shows the bride and groom. The remaining 2/3 just shows the sky, the sea, and the land. So that's the rule of thirds. This photo uses both horizontal and vertical lines, although the bulrushes are the obvious use of vertical lines. The horizontal line of the horizon is more subtle. Note too that the photo has been composed so the landscape follows the rule of thirds. So This photo shows both horizontal and vertical lines because these plants right here, these are vertical in nature, but in the background, you can see the horizon, which is horizontal in nature. And also the sky composes 1/3 of the photo. The rest of the 2/3 is composed of the plants. Curved lines, sometimes referred as S-curves, can help lead the eye through a photo and can suggest gracefulness, sexiness, or sensuality. Despite the name, S-curves don't need to be shaped exactly like an S. Any strong leading line that winds or curves can be considered an S-curve. So some curved leading lines often used in photography include paths and rivers. So this path right here, that's a curve, so it need not be really an S for as long as it is winding and curving. So when including diagonal leading lines within a photo, it's best if you can position them so that they start and finish just above or below the corner of a photo, like the railroad tracks shown here. So this will prevent the image from looking like it has been split in half because our eyes naturally scan photos from left to right. Composing an image to include diagonal leading lines that flow from the bottom left to the top right of a photo is also a great way to compose a shot. So same in the picture right here as shown. So you can see how the diagonals are being shown. The body of this acoustic guitar is a great example also of S-curves. Note the use of other leading lines in this photo too. So the diagonal lines of the guitar strings, the horizontal lines of the sheet of music in the background. So here you can see curved lines. So here you can see lines from the string. Here you can see horizontal lines from the song sheet. So this photo is composed of different types of lines. So 3 main types of lines. We have here repetition. Repetition occurs when 2 or more lines are drawn within a corner following the lines of the corner. So here, there is a repetition of lines also here, here. So we can see various repetition of lines. Lines that are in opposition to each other forms a contrast. So here, the lines are going this way. Here, the lines are going that way. Also here, so the lines are in contrast with each other. So the 3 main types of lines. First is a transition line. Is a line that connects 2 workflow elements. Transition lines allow you to define what the next step in a workflow will be. So here, the line is transitioning into smaller lines. I'm sorry, that's the third one. Transition lines, contrast lines, and repetition lines. To summarize, including leading lines within a photograph is a composition technique that can strongly influence the overall result of an image. Leading lines can direct a person's eye to a main focal point, or if used incorrectly, can draw the eye away from the subject or appear to cut a photo in half. So always be careful in using lines in taking photographs or in creating artworks. Next, we have another element. So the element of color. So color, by definition, refers to the visual perception of light being reflected from a surface of an artwork. In the most basic classification, colors can be divided into three groups: the primary colors, secondary, and tertiary colors. I think you have studied this one when you were in elementary, I think, or in high school in your art subject. So this is a diagram of a color wheel. Next, we have attributes or characteristics of color. First, we have what we call as hue. So hue is the term for the pure spectrum colors commonly referred to by the color name. So red, orange, yellow, blue, green, violet, which appear in the hue circle or rainbow. Theoretically, all hues can be mixed from three basic hues known as primary. So the words that we know, red, green, blue, those are hues of color. So the main three are red, green, and yellow. And from those three colors, we can create other hues. A color wheel, by definition, is an abstract illustrative organization of color hues around a circle that shows relationships between primary, secondary, and tertiary color. So I think all of you are familiar with the color wheel. Next, we have what we call as value. Value refers to the lightness or darkness of a color. It is the quality which depends on the amount of light and the dark in color. So here we transition from light going to dark colors. Next, we have tints, are values above the normal, and shades are values below the normal. Intensity, another attribute of color, refers to the brightness or darkness of color. It gives color strength. When a hue is vivid form, it is said to be in full intensity. When it is dulled, it is said to be partly neutralized. So, psychology of color, so the meaning behind colors. Colors have different psychological and emotional connotations. So, black is associated with death and gloom or sadness. White stands for purity and innocence. So these are the conventions of colors. Red is associated with blood, anger, and fear. Sometimes it can also depict happiness, depending on how an artist uses these colors. Green implies happiness and abundance, and also nature. So meanings of colors conveyed by the rose. So during Valentine's season or just any time of the year, people say that whenever you give a rose, it has a certain meaning depending on the color that you will be giving it to someone. So, for example, if you give someone a red rose, that means that you love that person. If you give roses or white roses, that's a symbol for friendship. So it will depend on how we interpret these colors. Next, we have the element texture. So it is the element that deals more directly with the sense of touch. So we can feel that one with our skin, with our hands. Applies to how an object feels or appears to feel. Can be either implied or actual. So here, texture is the element that deals more directly with the sense of touch. It has to do with the characteristics of surfaces, which can be rough or smooth, fine or coarse, shiny or dull, plain or irregular. So Even if we do not see or we do not touch these artworks, but just by looking at their textures, we can already identify or we can imagine just how these objects will feel if we'll be able to touch them. So here, this is an artwork or a photograph that shows a texture. I think this is abaca. This is made of abaca. So implied texture, by definition, expresses the idea of how a surface might feel. For example, a painting of a blanket might convey the idea that the blanket is soft, meaning you're not touching or feeling the actual object, but you can imagine how that object will feel. Actual texture, on the other hand, is texture that can actually be felt. So, for example, a ceramic bowl might feature a carved texture that could be felt when holding that bowl. So, actual meaning you can actually touch or feel that object. So, wood texture. So, here you can see different types of wood, and just by merely looking at these pictures, you will have an idea as to how these will feel like. Next, we have perspective. So if you can, or if you take a look at this picture, there are actually two perspectives. So one is, you can see picture of half the face of a man staring at you. The other perspective is the picture of a man in a side viewpoint, wherein this is his nose, and he is looking to the left. So by definition, perspective deals with the effect of distance upon the appearance of objects by means of which the eye judges spatial relationships. So we have different kinds of perspective. We have linear perspective is the representation of an appearance of distance by means of converging lines. So it has to do with the direction of lines with the size of the object. So although this place right here is the same as here, it would seem small because it is farther from our eyes. So painters usually show the effect of space and distance by using converging lines and diminishing size. Parallel lines below the eye level seem to rise to a vanishing point in the horizon, while those above the eye level seem to descend to the vanishing point. Next, we have aerial perspective. It is the representation of relative distance of objects by gradations of tone or color. So earlier, that was linear. So perspective in terms of lines. This one right here is in terms of color. So objects become fainter in the distance due to the effect of the atmosphere. Objects appear to be lighter in color as they recede into the distance or atmosphere. So these places right here would seem distant because of the use of colors. Next, we have space. So space refers to how the artist feels the surface on which a work of art is created. It can also refer to the expression of depth within a work of art. So when talking about a three-dimensional object, space is the actual volume that is taken up by the artwork. So space as an element of art refers to the distance or areas around, between, or within components of a piece. Space can be positive, white or light, or negative, black or dark, open or closed, shallow or deep, two-dimensional or three-dimensional. Sometimes space isn't actually within a piece, but the illusion of it. is. So if you take a look at these pictures, here you might seem to see two heads facing each other. And because of space, we can see here a certain chalice or a certain cup. So that's because of space. Positive space, the areas in a work of art that are subjects or areas of interest. So because of this space, we can see that this animal right here is the center of the artwork. Negative space, areas around the subjects or areas of interest. So shape, form, and volume are words that are used to describe distinct areas or parts of works of art or architecture. So form applies to the overall design of the work of art. It describes the structure or shape of an object. So form refers to a three-dimensional object. As such, form is an art term that is only applied to those artworks that are three-dimensional, such as examples are sculpture and pottery. Because if for two-dimensional objects, it doesn't have any form, but for three-dimensional, so we can see that it has a certain form to it. Forms, much like shapes, can be geometric or organic. Geometric forms have hard lines and edges. Organic forms are curvy and more free form. So types of form. Form and shape can also be described here. So organic examples are snow-covered boulders, typically are irregular in outline and often asymmetrical. Organic forms are most often thought of as naturally occurring. So forms that are natural or can be also seen in nature. Geometric forms are those which correspond to named regular shapes such as squares, rectangles, circles, cubes, spheres, cones, and other regular forms. So geometric forms are forms that can be seen in geometry. So here, this is geometric, that's a rectangle, triangle, circle. Here, this is also a circle which has rectangles around it. This is organic, that's irregular. This is organic, this is geometric. So this is Kenneth Cobenfus' design. So his furnitures has different forms to it. So this is a croissant, that's the yin yang chair. It's a Maya coffee table, and what's this? That's croissant sofa. Next, we have volume. Volume refers to the amount of space occupied in three dimensions. It refers to solidity or thickness of a certain object or art form. So that's it. Those were the different elements and principles in art. If you have questions, if you have clarifications, feel free to comment your questions in the comment section below. Thank you so much, you guys, for your time. You take care always, and bye-bye for now.